a friend of mine that worked at a grocery store that we used to stop by and visit with him, me and another buddy. And he was in World War II. He was in the Navy. He was in the North Sea. And he told us about the different times that he had in the Navy and what it was like and what he had to do and what his job was and everything. That more or less convinced my friend and I to join the Navy. And that's pretty much why I joined the Navy at that time. When you first joined the Navy, we had to go through boot camp, which is in Newport, Rhode Island. And there were so many guys being called that it was so crowded. They needed the recruits real bad. And instead of going to training in Newport for 6 to 8 weeks or more, I only spent 3 weeks in boot camp because they were pushing the recruits right through and they needed them on board ships and different things of that nature. And that's why I went to Newport and stayed there for 3 weeks and got an assignment to go to New York.
Do you remember what basic was like, even though you said it was 3 weeks? Do you remember what you did or any instructors or any things that you had to do during basic training?
Well, we had more or less training as far as calisthenics and things of that nature. And of course, you had your regular duties. And at that time, they didn't have the necessary facilities for people going into the service, especially in the training centers in Newport. We had Quonset huts, and that's pretty much what we had to live in. And we did what we had to do, and then waiting until our orders would be where they would send us in the Navy. Mm-hmm. Either send us to another camp or on board ship or whatever.
Did you think that you guys were ready for the challenge ahead?
We didn't know what to expect because they gave us our orders, and my order was to go to New York City to board the Normandy, which is a troop transport. They were to carry people over to Europe and different areas over in Europe. And so I was supposed to go in the Normandy and found out later that it caught fire as dockside in New York Harbor. And they changed my orders. Evidently, the welders' torches caused the fire in New York. So they changed my orders to go to Boston, and I went on board a brand new ship. It was just commissioned, along with 2 or 3 other sister ships of ours. And that's when I had to change my orders to go to Boston on board this anti-aircraft cruiser. We had to do a shakedown cruise after we left Boston Harbor. We were on a shakedown cruise where we get to get trained for gunnery exercises and everything that took place before we could go out to sea. And we spent probably 3 months on the East Coast, from Maine all the way down to Norfolk, Virginia. And we had to get all our necessary things on board ship, with like the degassing system, so it wouldn't pick up anything by...
so something demagnetized.
Magnetized. It was demagnetized is what it was. That was the main situation. It demagnetized the ship so it wouldn't pick up anything. And that's what the degassing system was about. Well, when you're first in the Navy, you're just an apprentice seaman, and you don't have any idea what's going on. And I was just an apprentice seaman, and then you spend time, and then you become a seaman second class, and then you go on to be a seaman first class. And but those things happened after you were on board ship and after you were out at sea. We weren't doing much training. We were just on our way to San Diego to pick up troop transports and be in a task force. We're Task Force 18, and we picked up 6 or 8 troop transports filled with Marines. And we had a task force of destroyers and cruisers, and then started out in the Pacific. And the troops that were on these transports are the ones that were going to be landing at Guadalcanal. Of course, we didn't know that till we got halfway out there. And that's where we went with all the troops, and we went through exercises at different islands that were necessary for training for the Marines and the Army. And then after we get down to Guadalcanal, that's when the troops landed on Guadalcanal.
So
That's when we bombarded when they were landing. When we left the States with the transports and the task force, that's when Jimmy Doolittle and the gang left on the
Doolittle raids.
when they took those B-25s off the carrier and they made their attack on Japan.